Welcome to Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. You're about to go on a journey of empathy, understanding, and transformation. Get ready to dive into the heart of humanity's most pressing questions with me, Rebbecca Hemmings, the CEO of Strawberry Words Training Consultancy, and guests. It's time to turn up the volume on kindness and to amplify the voices of minorities that often go unheard. This podcast asks questions like, how can we create workplaces where ethnic minorities thrive without the chains of career stagnation? What if universities were safe havens for all, free from the storm of microaggressions? And how can we bridge the gaps between cultures that have been divided by the walls of bias and ignorance? This is not just a podcast. This is a revolution of empathy. Welcome to Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. Get ready to explore, learn, and change the world one compassionate conversation at a time. Welcome, and today I want to talk to you about soft power and influence. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I was asked the other day to participate in a leadership program. As someone who's a leader in my area of work, I was asked to share my leadership insights, and the topic was around soft power. So I'd created all these notes, I'd had lots to say, and I found that I was becoming quite enthusiastic about it, because there are times where I feel like we don't have that much power. Can I just be honest with you? I think that's how I feel sometimes. But actually, through speaking about, or really having to think about what power we do have and what influence we do have, I realized actually, do you know what? There are lots of different ways in which we're able to influence and therefore hold that position of power. And I don't mean that from a point of view, but in terms of being able to make change. And I felt it necessary to share this, or I feel this necessary to share this, because I think there are a lot of people who are in a variety of positions, whether you're entry level, whether you're management, senior leadership, and so on. You know, you may feel as though you do not have enough power, but there's secret levels of power and influence that I've realized exist. Okay, and that's what I'm sharing with you. It's in my own personal insights. Okay, so for those of you who do not know, my name is Rebbecca Hemmings. I'm the director of Strawberry Words. Strawberry Words is a training consultancy, and we specialize in managing difficult conversations around race and discrimination. And we do that in a number of ways. We provide discrimination education, anti-racism education, DEI, and so on. We help organizations to cultivate cultures of compassion. So again, we do that through our diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy work. And as I said, we help people to manage difficult conversations around very difficult topics concerning discrimination. Okay, and we help develop policy and all of that. So I think it's useful to say that, because you don't always hear that when I do this podcast. Who do we work with? We work with a wide variety of organizations. I'd say the majority of our work is in universities, working with the staff. But we also work with large and small charities, corporations, and so on. So that kind of gives you some context as to the area in which we work in. But also we've spent, I'd say, the lion's share of Strawberry Words work has been in schools. That's when we first started. We don't do that so much now, but you know, when we first started, it was in schools. Okay, so these are the places in which we grow our influence, and what we're really wanting to influence people and organizations to do is to create welcoming spaces where everybody feels as though they belong, and therefore a compassionate culture has been created. So we're wanting people to create compassionate culture. So that's what we're trying to influence, right? So I was asked the question, how do you get people to buy into your ideas and yourself as a leader? Well, I think the first thing is people need to be able to trust us. Trust that the organization knows what it's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. The practitioners, trainers know what they're talking about, and that we can deliver. So the first thing is, for us, it's all about building that trust. Part of building that trust is about making sure that we're well informed. Do you see the books behind me? This is just a fraction of the level of research that we go. I mean, you can't see much here, but the level of research that we go into. Every single course, every single talk, or any intervention, and anywhere where obviously we're teaching people, we have to make sure we know our stuff. Okay, so we're constantly learning from new research, from research that's been around from time, and so on. So we have to make sure, and obviously, our own lived experience is really important as well, but also being able to speak to different people who have different forms of experience. And obviously, the longer we do this, the more we do this, the more we're learning. So that informs how we're able to talk about our work as well. So that when people are talking to us and asking us questions, I do plenty of Zoom calls with organizations and who are like fact finding, trying to find out if we're the right fit for them, and vice versa. But when I'm talking, I'm able to talk from experience, from having done all that reading, having done all the research, if you like, having read. And I think that helps massively to build trust. I've got to be honest as well, and I've got to be very honest with myself in that I know what stereotypes people have. I know that when people see me, and this is personal to me, I am a black woman, and with that intersection, being black and being a woman, there are stereotypes that people have, and whether people know it or they don't know it. I'm not saying that everybody does, but I know a lot of people do, right? So number one, being a woman, can you really be a leader? Are you strong enough? Are you resilient enough? Or are you weak in some way, shape or form? Being black, are you intelligent? Are you sure you know what you're talking about? Can you be relied upon? Will you really turn up to the meeting? So I know these things often go around people's heads. Okay, so what my job is to do, knowing all of that, is to instantly, when I'm speaking to someone, also there's a thing about, will she be angry? Will she be overly political, and all those kind of things. So I know that when I'm speaking to people, particularly when they're wanting to discuss race, there's usually a nervousness about that. We want to bring in anti-racism training, but please don't be too hard on us. I can feel that. I can sense that nervousness. So my role is to kind of like prove the opposite in ways. Okay, I am intelligent. No, I'm not angry. I do know what I'm talking about. Yes, I'm strong enough, and so on. Okay, it's just a part of the game. It's code switching, if you like. It's a form of code switching that I'm very aware of. What else? We asked questions that require deep thinking within sessions. Okay, so we know what we're doing, man. There's a process to what we do. There's always layers to what we do. So if we're running a workshop, we know we can't just go boom straight into some of the more tricky topics. There's got to be a process. So then we'll ask particular questions. We use what's known as transformative learning theory, which is a framework designed by Jack Mezirow. I'm going to get his last name wrong. Mezirow, that's him. And what it basically does, it gets you to question the values that you already hold. Not to say you're going to change them, but you're questioning them to see another way, to see something else, to see something different. And we generally always do that, and we do it quite well within our sessions. So again, when you caused people to really do a deep dive and think in a way that they hadn't thought they would, that helps to build trust also.
Hey, I know you're enjoying the podcast episode, but I just want to quickly come in and say, look, if you're an organization that needs anti-racism training for your organization because your staff are lacking in a racial literacy, they don't have the words, they get stuck when talking about racism, they want to be able to deal with incidents, but they're not sure how to, then check out our Time to Talk About Race online CPD accredited course at strawberrywords.co.uk. Okay, we can train from from 10 to 10,000. But get in touch today at admin@strawberrywords.co.uk. Now back to the episode.
I think also it's important to know your position in relation to the person you're speaking to. What's his name? There's a book, The 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene speaks about, never outshining the master type thing, and it's just, again, being able to carefully manage situations and conversations so that, gosh, how do I say this? Again, so people don't feel threatened by you. Again, particularly as a Black person, you're very aware of people feeling threatened by you. So you know how to position yourself. One of the questions I had around soft power, and we're going way over because time, as I said, I can talk about this forever. But one of the questions I was asked was around, do you have imposter syndrome? And if you do, how do you deal with it? And I would say that generally, yeah, of course I have imposter syndrome because everybody does, I think. I think everybody does. But it has been greatly reduced. It's nowhere near the level of imposter syndrome that I used to experience. And the reason for that is this work. It's being able to show up as my authentic self, talk about my experiences as a Black woman within training, within my talks and so on. I've been able just to be me. I can't tell you how validating that is. Not that I need outside validation, but just to be able to talk and have people listen and engage with what I'm saying. Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing. So therefore, I found certainly in the last 5 years or so, I've not really felt that sense of imposter syndrome. But I've suffered from it for most of my life. And it's only as I've learned more about the systems and structures that uphold systemic racism and sexism and all the other isms that I realized, that's what's been going on. Like, you're not supposed to succeed. You're not supposed to be confident. You're not supposed to speak up. I get it. That's the meta communication. So when you learn all this stuff and realize, well, hold on a minute, that's not true. Why is that? Why do people think that? Then you can feel free. You can feel free in your power, and that feels amazing. There are times when I'm in situations where perhaps I don't know much about the topic. In those sorts of situations, I then just become the learner. So I become quiet and I absorb information, and I'm very much obviously okay with that. Right, I've gone so much more over the time. I've gone over what I wanted to go over. There's so much I wanted to say to you, but just to say, how do I influence? Another question was asked. So how do you influence in difficult situations, in tense situations? Again, I go back to never outshine the master. That's one of them. And depending on who the character is, you've got to be really, there are all sorts of people out there, all sorts of personalities, and there are difficult personalities that exist. And, it's not of my nature anyway to go shouting and telling people to be quiet it's not, I don't do any of that stuff. But you certainly, in some situations, you do not want to stoke the fire. That's not what I do. Other people might do that. I don't do that. Okay. So what I want to do when situations are difficult, let's say in a training situation, and this has happened a few times. What I want to do is to validate that person and what they're saying, listen, don't talk over them. However, still challenge. You're not getting away with it that easily. You're not taking the floor. I'm still going to challenge you, but I'm going to make sure that you're being heard because your point of view is valid. However, so your point of view is valid. No, your experience is valid, I should say. That's more accurate. Your experience is valid. Okay. However, if it gets to a point where, I can see that this is getting disruptive, at that point I will shut it down and I will say, look, let's talk about this during the break. Or, I remind people why I'm there. and I'll say that this is taking us away from me doing what I came to do. We can talk about this afterwards. Or I remind them of, we always set up the sessions, kind of setting the ground rules. We talk about the 5 Ds of resistance to talking about race and discrimination. I'll remind them of that, but then I'll shut that down. Also, it's important to know, again, in these sorts of situations, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, it's to know when you're fighting a losing battle. Okay, so when that happens, again, make your exit. And also, again, talking about race in particular can be very traumatizing. I'm very conscious of that. And so I'm very conscious of when something is a hurtful situation, it's a harmful situation. And again, I'll make my way out of that situation. All right. And the last thing I'll say really is, if you've heard this podcast, you've probably heard me say this a few times, but if you haven't heard it before, I'm going to say this. One of the best ways in which we influence as a company is through planting seeds. So to make that make sense, let me tell you the reason for why Strawberry Words is called Strawberry Words. So the average, we communicate through words. That's the words piece. But the average strawberry has over 200 seeds on the outside. So we like to think that with every talk, with every training course, with every intervention, what we're doing is planting seeds of knowledge, growth, and development. People may not take on board what we're saying today. Maybe next week they'll start to really think about it. Or when they see something on the news, or, something's happened at work, they might think, oh yeah, I remember Rebbecca said so-and-so, it said this, or it might be years. But what's happening is we know those seeds are going to be watered, because discrimination and racism, unfortunately, they aren't going away anytime soon. So as these things keep coming up, people will be reminded of what was said within our training, within our consultancy work, and so on. And eventually those seeds will grow and bloom, and that knowledge will have landed. Okay, so that's it. That's all I want to say really about soft power and influence, and to a certain degree managing difficult conversations. I think there's so much more I can say about managing difficult conversations, and so I will come back and do a few more episodes about that. But for now, just to say thank you. If you like this, please share it. You can share it from the blog page on strawberrywords.co.uk. Please comment, send us a message if we can help you out at all, and listen out for the next episode. Thank you. Bye.